As mentioned earlier, the 2018 Key Platform coverage team have gathered presentation data. You saw some of them, and selected themes on interviews with 50 blockchain companies. You heard some of the examples. Joining us now here on stage are globally renowned leaders who have always provided to us here insightful information for this event. And I'm very happy to welcome here on stage our old friend and buddy Klaus Kielsen, the CEO of the Copenhagen Institute for Future Studies. Klaus is a futurist and economist. Hello, Klaus. Then, next, again, happy to see you here, Perry Ha, the founder and managing director of Draper Athena. Good to have you here again. Edward Rogoff is the Dean of School of Business from the Long Island University, and Edward is also a mentor and coach of Jeff Bezos, the CEO and founder of Amazon. Thank you, Edward, for being here on stage with us. Very good to see you again, Paul. We had already a splendid evening yesterday, and now happy to have you here to share your views with the audience. Paul is professor from the Maastricht University School of Business and Economics. And then last but not least, welcome Yu-Sung Yu. You are the Dean of the Business School from the CHA University. Welcome here all together. And not making too long words, I would like to hand over directly to Klaus so that we get his precious view and opinion on these topics. Klaus.
Thank you very much. And we have only 10 minutes, so I will do it very quickly. But first of all, I want to congratulate the theme from Money Today on writing this very, very interesting report. And basically, I, as a futurist, agree on all the 10 key takebacks. These trends are all there, and they could unfold. And what the report have also done is they have kind of overlaid all these, and then they have created a very extreme, decentralized, distributed society with a redistribution of power in economy, in democracy, etc. As a futurist, and a futurist from the world's oldest independent future studies organization, we have seen such things before, just like we had the former Prime Minister describing the Dutch tulip bubble. So what I would like to use my remaining 8 minutes on is to see what do we have to monitor to understand how will this actually unfold? What are the must-win battles? What could go wrong? Because, of course, blockchain or distributed ledgers technology has a huge potential. But historically, we have also had what we call blind enthusiasm in a lot of technologies, and things have actually been unfolding in a different way. And when we look at change in general, we have to see who is losing power and who is gaining power. And the people losing power, what kind of tools are in their toolbox? The reason prime ministers and governments have power is because they can collect tax. If they can't control cryptocurrencies, they will lose power. But right now they have a monopoly on power. So if you want to be successful, you have to understand that, and you have to collaborate. You have to answer these relevant questions. In Europe, for instance, Uber is an amazing idea, driven by megatrend technology, driven by the smartphone. You cannot prevent the megatrends. They will happen no matter what. But the taxi drivers in a lot of countries and the unions were strong enough to prevent Uber. So you need to understand how these things unfold. Then the already and why things sometimes go slower, because if we are investing in tulips, then it's all about timing. I believe that the blockchain will change the world, but is it now or will it take longer? and what things do you need to monitor? These are the relevant questions. Then if you look at some of the established players, then they already have sunk costs. In my pocket, I have a Revolut MasterCard. Here, I can now do foreign exchange in 128 countries at the spot price. My old bank charged me always 2%. Then they wanted an additional amount if I actually wanted cash in the ATM. But due to the fact that this has been digital for many years, now they just stopped charging me, and the infrastructure is already there. I used to pay a lot of money, even traveling in Europe, for roaming. Now I have free roaming in Europe, in North America, in China, in Australia, in Singapore. Unfortunately not in South Korea, so I bought a SIM card. But the infrastructure is already there. So when the new players that are going to disrupt, they have to offer me something that is much better, because I'm a lazy consumer and the world is getting more and more complex. So look into those dynamics. This is what we also call the power of convenience, because some of the conclusions in the report is based on idealism. And when Airbnb arrived, it was a decentralized, it was end-to-end user, and people said it's also about resource sharing. And I can stay in Michael's home in his house, but basically, I don't want to know him. The most popular thing on Airbnb is entire homes, and it's actually, we are looking at what is a hotel at an attractive price, then I am still considering the hotel. So the idealism alone cannot drive it, and I would say the primary driver of Airbnb is affordable prices. It's affordable prices. So if something is driven on idealism alone, then there is a challenge. Then we have the networks effects, that the reason that Facebook is popular is because we are already on it. If we look at blockchain startups, there are thousands of them right now, and they are competing, and blockchain is not the single distributed ledger. There are actually others even more promising. So to harvest those benefits, how and who will be the winner in this ecosystem? It will be a distributed winner, but there are, when something is digital, it's a winner takes it all world. So that's also a relevant take back. Then there need, at least in my opinion, there need to be related business models. We know that we have open office, but no one is evolving open office as fast as Microsoft Office. So Microsoft Office is winning that game on innovation, even though the idea that people, when open office occurred, when people thought Microsoft was becoming too dominant a player and charging a little bit too much. We have Linux. Linux is actually being developed not for laptops and PCs, but for server infrastructure. But that's because IBM is selling the servers, and they are throwing in a lot of money. It's still an open platform, so it's still open innovation. But we need to find out where are the relevant business models in those ecosystems. And you, as a blockchain entrepreneur, you need to find that, and you need to be able to identify that question, or to answer that question, or as an investor. You need to be pretty sure of the business model to secure the long-term success. And then finally, to end on a good note, we think that from empowerment of the bottom of the pyramid and to establish trust, especially in societies where there's a huge lack of trust, there the value is extremely high, and this is where we will see the largest benefits from these new technologies, and that is actually very closely related to the end note from the former speaker regarding the Sustainable Development Goals. That trust is the fuel needed in those regions and country, and this is one of the areas where we are very, very positive from the Copenhagen Institute for Future Studies. Thank you for the time, and thank you for providing such a great report. And now I will hand over the slide deck to Perry.
Good morning. We actually heard a fantastic presentation earlier this morning regarding blockchain and the acceleration of digital economy. And I truly believe that blockchain really is what enables the internet to be on the next level. and it will really accelerate the digital economy. So my title really is about embrace or perish. Let's step back for a second. Okay. Blockchain, I call it Internet 3.0, mainly because it's enabling a whole lot of different things. First, we understand, at least earlier on, the speakers talked about the power of decentralization and what it could potentially enable. But there's also a lot of hype around it, too. Let's not forget, right? Even last year, we had about 1,000 ICOs, initial coin offerings. You're probably familiar with that word by now. And so far, about 100 hedge funds have been formed just to invest in ICOs and digital assets. So you can tell that the dissemination of information for any opportunity has been so fast that people flock toward any kind of new opportunities. And along with that, there's hype, right? And we're already going through a null period, and I'm pretty sure within the next 2 years, there will be a significant correction on blockchain and ICOs. But don't forget, though, if you look back, the penetration of internet in 1995, 1994, that's essentially what it feels like to me where we are in terms of blockchain. The penetration and the usage of blockchain, it's really at the beginning stage if you look at the long haul. I started investing, I've been venture capital for almost 20 years. I started investing in 1997, and I had to unfortunately live through the bubble, right? The internet, the big hype came, and we all invested in B2C companies, B2B companies. Anything you call .com, people invested, including dogfood.com. And shortly after that, they all went belly up. But did it stop the penetration of internet? Clearly not. Right? If you look at this slide, right now, worldwide, we're about 45% penetration of internet, some at higher speeds than others. And I truly believe that blockchain, the distributed technology that enables the internet protocols in a whole different way will make a huge difference. Let's pause for a second, why this is such a big deal. I know earlier speakers talked about it, but let me just give you a quick example. There's a cost associated, there's an economic term, right? There's a cost associated with uncertainty when you do transactions. Let's say I provide a service to someone, Mr. named Dominic. Since we don't know that well, we decide that we draw up a contract, right? I'll provide X, Y, and Z kind of services, certain quality. If I provide the service by a certain time, he'll pay me $1,000, let's say. That contract is written in order to take care of that uncertainty because of the transaction. I'm not sure if I provide the service that he'll pay me, and vice versa. He's not sure that I'm going to provide the service in a way that he expects me to provide. So therefore, we created this whole infrastructure of trusted third parties called financial institutions, legal services, escrow agents, and all that. Right? We go talk to a lawyer and get a contract, and we sign and take it off. But now, even with that contract, either one of us could still breach. I provide a service in my mind, Dominic doesn't pay me, so I get really upset, or vice versa. How do we enforce this contract? We go to the government. The role of the government is really about enforcing the contract that we have established. So if you think about the overhead associated with Dominic and me doing a simple transaction for $1,000 is enormous. Blockchain with smart contract concept gets rid of all that. So imagine how efficient it could be, right? That's why the promise is so great. So we know government's worried. In a simple way, government thinks, oh, we have to protect the consumers because there's so much hype, so people really don't understand. The grandmothers, aunt next door, oh, ICO or blockchain, we got to invest. Of course, they don't really understand what's going on, and they'll lose money. So in the name of protecting the consumers, government could say, hey, we got to stop this thing, which is essentially what has happened in China and in Korea. The ICO is banned. Not illegal, but it's banned. But practically, because of this thing called 정사법 in Korea, essentially it's illegal. Right? But there's also self-interest from the government perspective. If smart contract really became ubiquitous, the need for government gets diminished. So if you're a public servant, then you have to protect your job. So there's an interesting parallel back in the 70s when Las Vegas, the land of gambling, where the mafias controlled the streets. Mafia's job was really the body of enforcing the contract. So in other words, they were playing the government role in the area of Las Vegas. But their penalty for anybody who breaks the contract was really severe. They get whacked. So there was no crime during that period. And then government took over, tried to make it clean. And of course, crime's all over because the penalty for breaking the contract was so low. So US government spent a lot of money trying to control and understand mafia because there's a competition, right? So if you look at the world in a way, with the role of the government, it is actually quite fascinating what it does. So the overhead could be awfully high. Now, I kind of digress a little bit, but the regulation has consequences. If a government blindly says, oh, we want to protect the consumers who really don't understand what's going on, therefore blocked trading of any kind of cryptocurrencies or stop ICOs altogether, then the government's really putting a halt to a whole wave of innovation that could come about. So the cost is actually quite high. Going back, so there were actually ICOs. ICO is banned in Korea, as you know, but one of our companies we invested in and a whole bunch of others ended up doing initial coin offerings anyway, but not in Korea. They go to Singapore, they go to Switzerland and other places. There's actually lots of economic opportunities for a country that prevents these things from happening. So the cost is awfully high. And let me talk a lot more about digital economy. Digital economy really dominates the future. So some of the examples you've heard today is really about how banking works, how insurance works, how the way we shop works by applying blockchain technology and make it distributed. And those are good examples. And there will be some of the existing brick-and-mortar businesses that will be taken up and perhaps made more efficiently by using blockchain. But I think looking at that way is actually incorrect. If you think about what's potentially being enabled by blockchains and digital economy is something that we would not be able to understand today. And that's the way we have to trust it. 20 years ago, if someone told you that, oh, I'm going to play a video game, I have my own avatar, and I'm going to pay $5 to put a skin on my avatar, people say, get out of here. Who would pay real money for a digital avatar to play a game so you can look good in the game? That made no sense. But it's already a multi-billion-dollar business today. Esports, League of Legends, the World Championship gets almost as much viewership as NFL Super Bowl. And I don't think too many people know that. There's a huge economic opportunity to be built, but it's not harnessed because appropriate technology hasn't been available. And I think blockchain will play a big factor. So the point I'm trying to make is, don't look at the current world of the way you do things today and say, oh, I don't see how blockchain could work here. That's not the point. The point is, the line that's growing really fast is about the growing economy, accelerating economy on the digital side. My concluding slide, very simple. We must proceed forward, but with caution. There's clearly over-exuberance on blockchains and what it could do potentially, and on the ICOs. But there's fundamentally value there, and you cannot ignore it. And I truly believe that the future prosperity of a nation is tied to how well that nation embraces and utilizes blockchain and distributed technologies. Thank you.
Thank you, Perry.
Should I give it to next?
So, Edward, are you?
Okay.
No.
All right, thank you very much. I'm recovering from knee surgery, so if you'll indulge me while I make my comments from a seated position. I salute the job that the two previous speakers, Anthony Kim and Sung Jung Hong, have made in presenting an overview of the current and future state of technologies such as blockchain, the Internet of Things, and tokenization. Their comments are based upon their own knowledge and understanding, as well as interviews with experts. There are certain key themes running through their comments, and I think they're overwhelmingly important. One, blockchain is here to stay. Blockchain technology delivers a combination of efficiency, transparency, security, and privacy that puts it far ahead of current systems. Two, open systems such as blockchain will decentralize the web and disrupt large dominant companies and platforms that support systems of intermediaries. Three, cryptocurrencies are also here to stay in some form. Although the future, even the present, will be characterized by replacements to Bitcoin and the significant use of tokens to reward, quote, good behavior, unquote. Four, these technologies will have huge impacts on the operation of government, from identity verification to voting. I agree with their points and appreciate the boldness of their predictions. I've been asked to provide some commentary to their thoughts from a business and economics point of view, so given that I greatly admire the job they have done, let me try to do just that. First, we need to understand that predicting is the hardest of tasks. As we all see year after year, the largest financial firms in the world, with virtually unlimited resources to carry out research, cannot successfully predict future valuations of a relatively small group of companies traded on public stock exchanges. Economists are notoriously bad at predicting the future ups and downs of the economy of any particular country, the region, or the world. None of us here today is likely to be any different. There are many great examples of failed predictions by experts, from the unsinkability of the Titanic to the lack of futures for inventions such as the automobile, the telephone, the copy machine, and even the computer. Why should we expect our predictions about technologies that seem to be the new best thing to be any different? We should not. The success or failure of any new technology is based on too many variables, and especially unknown factors, to be accurately predicted. Nonetheless, we must work to understand these technologies, their potential impacts, and identify potential profitable ventures based upon them. Will blockchain, cryptocurrencies, and other new emerging technologies spell the end of current dominant players in technology such as Google, Facebook, or Amazon? I doubt it, because these companies have cultures where they understand that new technology is moving fast, and they have to be a part of it, if not indeed the leaders of it, in order to maintain their competitive positions. In addition, their huge financial firepower gives them the power to purchase companies built on these technologies that are making inroads, as they have already done. However, blockchain and public demands for greater privacy may rob them of their core business model, which is selling and using data. Government regulation may also contribute to this change in their main line of business, selling data and selling access to companies, to customers based on that data that these firms have collected. What role will government play in the impact of these new technologies? I may be no better than anyone else at predicting the future, but I will go out on a limb here and make the predictions that government will be huge factors in the development and commercialization of these technologies. Politicians need to be reelected, and as or if this issue of privacy continues to become more important to voters, the politicians will have to deliver regulatory requirements about data privacy. Regarding cryptocurrencies, governments need to protect their revenue streams from taxes that can be sidestepped by Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. The governments cannot allow that to happen and will force cryptocurrencies into the mainstream from which taxes can be collected and illegal acts detected. Will these new technologies increase global prosperity, or will they reduce it? Can we be assured that barriers to new ventures will be reduced by these new technologies? As an economist, I'm an optimist about new technology. New technology is always feared, but in the end, it increases productivity, and that is fundamental to prosperity. Word processing was feared because of all the typists and secretaries that it would and did put out of work. But unemployment in most developed countries has been unaffected by this technology because these people found other employment and business opportunities. Time does not permit me to go through all the other similar examples. These new technologies will be deployed in ways to increase efficiency, to grow profits, to generate new investment, and to provide consumers with products and services that better meet their needs. Call me an optimist. When it comes to technology, I am one. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Edward. Thanks a lot. Yeah, can we hand over then to our friend Paul?
Sure.
Paul, talk about shared value creation.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Marty, today for inviting me, for re-inviting me. I am also a true friend of Seoul, of South Korea, and I'm truly a fan of this conference. And I'm also a fan of the report that has been written. I think it was a very wise report with a lot of very interesting and important trends to be described. And I've been asked to share some comments, and I'm very happy to do so. So first of all, I admire the work that has been done for the report, and then of course, typically Dutch, but I have some remarks. And the most important thing, of course, is that this is about shared value creation. We talk about the democratized economy, the shared value creation, and I would like to share some thoughts with you about how to make that possible. What kind of culture, what kind of environment do we need to make all these promises really reality? And I also have a few warnings there. So first of all, we are dealing with a complex world, with complex problems, with complex opportunities, and we have to deal with this in an intelligent way. But what does intelligence mean? Well, we need the right brains. What is so special about our brains? Yes, we do have a lot of brain cells, but more importantly, we do have a lot of connections between the brain cells, and that creates that neural network that we call our brain, and that makes that we can make intelligent decisions, that we can work together, and all those things. And I think the same applies to we human beings being connected to each other. And companies being connected to each other, and even like Prime Minister Jan-Peter Balkenende said, countries to be connected. These connections, that at the end of the day, they will give us the intelligence to move forward and to deal with all these new opportunities and new challenges. And that actually is the essence of what we call combinatoric innovation. Every new combination gives, in fact, a new opportunity for a new innovation. So make new combinations, make new friends, talk to your neighbor, talk to other people, talk to new companies, talk to new countries, and then automatically new opportunities will emerge. They only exist then when you have these new connections. That, at the end of the day, is the essence. Now, how can you make it happen? Because we all want this, so why does it not happen all the time? And why is it, in fact, an art, and at least a skill? It is because we have to match a couple of things. We have to have a fit of cultures. And that's also why I think that from Holland and South Korea, we enjoy very much to work together, because we have, in many aspects, matching cultures. Yes, we are very different, but we have some shared values. Secondly, we need to have a strategic fit. Every one of us has his or her own goals. The companies have their own goals. Countries have their own strategies. We can only have a joint strategy if it fits with the individual strategies. So we have to appreciate that, we have to understand each other's strategies, and we have to work together on that. And thirdly, we need to have a kind of operational fit. We must be able to work together. We have to bridge languages. And not only the language Korean versus Dutch versus English, but also computer languages. That's the basis also of blockchain technology and similar technologies, that we're able to connect and that we use similar languages, similar knowledge, similar descriptions, similar requirements, so that we, in fact, we can work together. That's the operational fit. Now, yes, there are a lot of promises. And I've been a director of an incubator, and I've seen many, many business cases. And of course, there are a lot of promises about all these new technologies. But here's a little warning. My summary and there was already a great talk about impracticability, unpredictability. In fact, we cannot predict the future. Nevertheless, if we see a lot of predictions made, a lot of promises made, I sometimes think, oh, be careful here. And before we know, we end up with an example of this definition, which says a business case is a set of lies that make somebody else decide what we want them to decide. And be very careful not to fall in that trap. And before we know, and I think this is a crucial point here, we will be exposed to this formula, which says new technology in an old society will give you an expensive old society. And we have to be very careful not to fall in this trap. So we have to pay very much attention to the society itself, to the culture in the society, to people. People work together, the basis on which people work together and want indeed to share their knowledge. So as an example, we talk about the Internet of Things, the IoT. We all heard about it. I hate it. Internet of Things. We should forget about it. We should go to the internet of everyone and everything. But because where's my internet? Now there seems to be Internet of Things, and I know what my internet is. There's an internet where my data are being sold. I'm the product. So I want my internet back. It's mine. It's ours. It's yours. And if we have that type of internet, then we can start really working together and create and share value. That's my personal opinion. Same for artificial intelligence. I hate it. Artificial intelligence. What is artificial about intelligence? It's my intelligence, it's our intelligence. Yes, we have now computers that also process algorithms. And in some cases, maybe better than we do. But we don't need artificial intelligence, we need additional intelligence that is connected to our own intelligence, so that we can connect, we can combine, and by these combinations, we can improve and we can increase and we can share more value. So that's is a matter of looking at the same phenomenon from a different perspective, but put the people, put the human being central again, because this is our world, and it's not the world of the computers, it's ours, isn't it? So I think if you talk about blockchain and artificial intelligence and Internet of Things, I love it. But please beware of the position that the people have. So instead of just talking about distributed ledgers, that's the idea of the blockchain. We have a ledger, we store all the information, and we put it on every single computer. I think it's even more important to talk about distributed knowledges. It's our knowledge, and let's make sure that we use and reuse and connect the knowledge in people, in organizations, in systems, and that is the game we have to play. That, at the end of the day, will create the environment, the culture, the world that indeed is enabling us to find new solutions, find new opportunities, and indeed establish this shared value creation. Now, is this easy? No, of course not. It has already been said, we are just at the beginning. And at the beginning means that we still have a lot to learn. Let's also create together an environment, a culture for learning, and make sure that we learn fast. And what do we learn most from? From the successes? Well, there are not so many successes yet. We just started. So what is probably the most important process for a mechanism for learning is to learn from our failures. So I think we should really keep this in mind. We will do a lot of learnings. We will do a lot of experience. We will do a lot of failing. And don't consider failing to be bad. Consider failing as a very human thing, and we are all entitled to fail. Actually, I propose a new fundamental human right, the fundamental human right to fail brilliantly. And if we create that environment, then again we have a culture, we have an environment, we have a society put together around people, where people work together, where people fail together, where people learn together. And I think that is very crucial to make a world that is enabling all these new technologies, and that will, at the end of the day, make the promises that are being made reality. Thank you so much.
Very interesting, Paul. Thanks a lot. Yeah, please, your son.
얼마 전에 우리나라에서 모 증권사에서 사건을 한번 일으켜서 커다랗게 문제가 됐었는데요. 그 얘기가 나오고 나니까 상당히 많은 사람들이 드디어 빨리 블록체인을 증권사 같은 데다가 금융에 도입하면 좋겠다 하는 얘기들을 꺼내면서 우리나라도 이미 그 블록체인에 대한 개념들이 많이 보편화되어 있구나 하는 생각들이 들었고요. 최근에 그 뉴욕대의 그 루비니 교수는 이러한 그 불확실성 시대가 계속 생겨나면서 미래를 예측한다는 것 자체가 넌센스라는 의미로 뉴 에버노멀이라는 시대가 도래했다라고 얘기를 하는데, 그 중심축에 지금 오늘 주제가 되고 있는 그 블록체인이 있는 것 같습니다. 저는 조금 그 실질적인 문제에 접근해가지고요. 그 미국발 경제 위기가 생긴 지가 10년이 지났는데 10년 전을 한번 비교를 해보도록 하겠습니다. 10년 전에 2007년도에 보면 전 세계 시가총액 상위 12기업은 엑슨모빌이 1등을 하고 있었고요. GE, 마이크로소프트, 시티그룹 등 해서 10개가 있었는데, 여기서 잘 보시면 두 개 분야가 두드러지게 나타나고 있는데, 에너지 분야가 엑슨모빌부터 시작해서 페트로차이나나 로얄 더치셀 같은 것들이 있고, 금융 분야가 많이 눈에 띄고 있죠. 시티그룹부터 시작해서 뱅크 오브 아메리카, 그다음에 중국의 공상은행 같은 것들. 그런데 10년이 지난 이후에 작년 기준으로 보면 전 세계 12기업 중에서 10년 전에 있던 것들이 거의 다 사라지고 남아있는 게 한두 개밖에는 없습니다. 여기 이제 파란색으로 표시가 되어 있는 부분들이 그 ICT 기업들인데요. 1등부터 5등까지를 ICT 기업들이 다 석권을 했고요. 그리고 중국의 혁신 기업들의 도약이 상당히 놀랍습니다. 그리고 맨 오른쪽에 보시는 대로 이들 기업들이 10년 동안 이뤄낸 기업 가치가 아주 놀라울 정도로 획기적인데, 이거를 며칠 전자로 다시 한번 제가 체크를 해보니까 다시 알리바바나 이런 데 페이스북들이 상위권을 진출하고 있고요. 1등부터 5위까지는 ICT 그룹의 변화가 없습니다. 조만간에 1등부터 8등, 곧 요새 넷플릭스나 이런 그 ICT 기업들이 치고 올라오면서 조만간에는 전부 다 이게 파란 색깔로 도배가 될 날도 얼마 남지는 않았다라는 생각이 들고요. 이런 와중에 보면은 미래를 개척할 이런 그 신세대 주자로 유니콘 얘기를 많이 하고 있는데, 유니콘은 작년에도 제가 여기서 유니콘에 대해서 얘기를 했었는데, 기업 가치가 US 달러로 10억 달러 이상인 비상장 스타트업을 유니콘이라고 얘기를 하고 있습니다. 그런데 유니콘 기업들의 개수가 계속 늘어나면서 10억 달러가 아니라 100억 달러가 넘는 기업들은 보시는 대로 데카콘이라는 신조어가 만들어졌고요. 그 다음에 1000억 달러가 한두 달에 곧 달성할 수 있을 것 같은데요. 1000억 달러 기업이 나오게 되는 경우에는 헥토콘이라는 이름을 붙이고 있는데, 모든 사람들이 우버가 헥토콘이 되는 거가 첫 번째 헥토콘이 될 거다라고 예상했던 거가 의심치 않았었는데, 예상을 깨고 중국 기업은 그 엔트 파이낸셜이라는 회사가 한두 달 있으면은 헥토콘으로 등장할 것 같습니다. 지금 예상되는 시가총액은 110조 원 정도 되는 이런, 상당히 이런 유니콘들의 기세가 놀랍고요. 상당히 많은 사람들이 유니콘이 나왔을 때 유니콘이라는 단어하고 시체라는 합성어, 시체라는 콥스의 합성어를 유니콥스라는 걸 만들어서 저주를 많이 퍼붓습니다. 유니콘들의 시체가 너무 많이 생겨서 실리콘밸리를 다니는 게 상당히 어려울 거다 이렇게 얘기를 했었는데, 다행히 시체가 한두 그루 최근에 나오기는 했는데 예상했던 대로 거의 나오지는 않고 있고요. 그 다음에 유니콘들이 IPO를 한다든가 M&A를 통해서 성공적인 케이스를 만드는 그 엑시콘도 많이 등장을 하고 있는 상태인데요. 이 와중에 유니콘 기업들의 개수가 늘어나면서 데카콘 기업이라고 말씀드린 대로 아까 100억 달러를 넘어가는 기업들의 개수가 천문학적으로 늘어나고 있는데, 지금 얼마 전에 제가 조사해 보니까 지금까지 만들어진 유니콘의 개수가 411개 정도 되는데, 처음으로 작년에 블록체인 관련된 기업이 하나 유니콘으로 탄생을 했습니다. 그래서 앞으로 시간이 지나고 나면 얼마나 많은 그 블록체인 관련된 기업들이 유니콘으로 들어갈지는 모르겠지만 지금은 한 개의 기업이 있다라고 말씀드릴 수가 있고요. 유니콘이라는 그 용어가 처음 만들어진 거는 2013년도에 카우보이 벤처스의 에일린 리라는 그 분이 비상장 기업이 시가총액이 천문학적이다라는 것도 좀 놀랍고, 이런 기업들이 상당히 빠르게 3, 4년 만에 시가총액이 10억 달러를 달성한다는 거에 대해서 놀라움을 표시하면서 전설 속의 동물과 같이 희소성이 있고 상당히 특이하다, 그렇게 얘기를 하면서 세계 언론들이 유니콘에 관심을 갖게 됐고요. 그래서 많은 그 언론사들이 유니콘들을 조사하기 시작했는데 공식적으로는 2014년도부터 조사를 하기 시작했습니다. 그래서 유니콘 개수가 만들어진 총 숫자를 보면 2014년도부터 2018년도까지 상당히 기하급수적으로 많이 늘어나는 걸 볼 수가 있고요. 더불어서 M&A를 한다든가 IPO를 통해서 액세스된 것들도 111개 정도 나와서 지금 그 데피니션 상으로 액티브 유니콘이라고 할 수 있는 거는 2018년 현재 300개가량 된다고 볼 수가 있습니다. 이들 기업들의 분포를 보면 딱 50%가 미국에 있고요. 상당히 중국의 기세가 무서운데 116개, 한국 기업은 3개가 나왔다가 하나는 엑싯을 해서 지금은 2개가 남아있는 이런 상태로 되어 있고요. 지금 보시는 대로 미국이 상당히 많은 숫자를 갖고 있는데 중국의 성장이 미국 성장하는 거에 비해서 훨씬 더 빠르게 성장하고 있다는 것을 보실 수가 있고, 참고로 대한민국에서 작년에 일어났던 그 투자들과 어떤 기업들에 많이 투자를 했는지 좀 살펴보면 야놀자나 우한 형제들 이런 식으로 컨서지 플랫폼들이 그 투자가 집중되는 것을 한국에서도 볼 수가 있는데, 제가 오늘 말씀드리려고 하는 거의 결론 부분은 이런 것들입니다. 지금 유니콘 기업들은 대부분 기술 기반의 과거의 3차 산업혁명 시대까지 이끌었다는 테크놀로지 푸시형의 기술이 시장을 선도하고 산업을 이뤄나가는 테크놀로지 푸시형이었었다 그러면, 최근 들어서 4차 산업혁명 시대는 산업을 견인하는 것은 대부분 다 마켓 풀 방식입니다. 그런데 지금 블록체인이 상당히 얘기가 많이 되고 있는데 우려스러운 거 한 가지는 블록체인이라는 기술을 중심에 두고 시장을 견인할 거다라고 하고 진행을 하게 되면 과거의 패러다임에 몰입돼서 소위 얘기하는 그 하버드 대학의 존 구아빌 교수가 컬스 오브 이노베이션, 혁신의 저주라는 얘기를 했었는데, 기술 자체는 성공할 수 있을지는 몰라도 비즈니스가 성공한다든가 뿌리를 내는 거에서 실패할 가능성이 상당히 크다는 걸 좀 명심을 하면 좋겠다는 생각이 들고요. 블록체인은 모르는데 비트코인을 잘한다라고 대답한 사람도 꽤 많이 있고요. 참 아이러니하게도요. 근데 최근에 그 세계 경제 포럼에 있는 글로벌 리스크 팀에서 어떤 우려를 내놨냐면, 블록체인이라는 건 극히 소수의 전문가들이 이해할 수 있는 상당히 고도의 소프트웨어 프로그램인데 여기에 너무 일반 사람들이 열광하는 거가 좀 우려가 된다라는 이런 얘기가 있었다라는 거고, 전문가일수록 블록체인에 대한 한계점을 갖고 있기 때문에 상당히 신중하게 전개가 된다는 얘기가 있었고, 또 하나는 블록체인은 20%가 기술이고 80%는 비즈니스로 이루어진다. 그래서 여러분들이 말씀을 하셨지만 정부와 기업과 모든 사람들이 기술 중심이 아니라 컨센서스를 이루고 모든 사람들이 집단 지성이 형성이 될 때 블록체인이 꽃을 피우고 우리가 기대하는 미래가 될 것 같습니다. 감사합니다.
Thank you very much. You've been all in time. Super, excellent. That allows us at least to have 2-3 questions here on the platform. Overall, we are already a little bit late, so we decided no questions for this session from the audience. But Paul, having you as the Chief Failure Officer here, I'm of course super interested to hear what's your view in all this. What is the biggest risk in this blockchain discussion? What is the biggest risk that you see?
This is typically a development that involves many stakeholders. People with invested interest, that has also been mentioned. unknown technology. We have seen also some incidents yet with blockchain and with Bitcoin type of experiments. So I think the biggest risk is simply the world is complex and we don't know all the answers yet. And the experiments, the new developments should tell us and should learn us. But the best we can do is keep on trying and start with the best intentions. And the intentions are, let's create a better world for all of us. And if we do that, then if something goes wrong, it will be a brilliant failure. And at least we should forgive each other and say, it's good that we tried, it's good that we learned, let's make the next move.
Okay, thank you, Paul. So risk is the one thing, but having Klaus here with us, a futurist and an economist. Klaus, who are the winners? Who is the winner? What do you predict? Is there an industry or is there a kind of company? Who are the winners?
Well, the new winners are hard to predict, but as has been mentioned already by several people in the panel, don't underestimate the giants, don't underestimate the existing players, and the winners there will be defined about their ability to adapt and then also stay humble. Because the main driver here from the behavioral perspective that we don't want our data misused. Yeah, but actually I want people to know me, so if they use the data that I give them in a nice way, then I will continue.
Okay, Klaus, that helps. And last but not least, Perry, maybe among us, we are almost alone here. I know you are an investor, you are a man of finance, you are a founder of a company. What advice would you give privately here to me? The others, they are not listening. Just privately to me when it comes to investing into cryptocurrencies. Have you invested? What is your advice in that direction?
The advice, buy low, sell high. But I think at the end of the day, I've seen so many different cycles, different buzzwords around which VCs or venture capitalists huddle around and invest a lot. And many of those buzzwords don't pan out, and we don't hear about it. But every so often, some things really take off. AI is one of them, right? Back in the year 2000s, optical communications was one, and these things all go around. And then this thing called blockchain really took off. And that's why there's an overhype, and also with the dissemination, easy dissemination of information, people hear about it a lot faster, and they all want to jump in. Therefore, the hype gets amplified. So what I would suggest is, some things you never know whether new things will take off or not. But I would suggest that read a lot, learn a lot, talk to people, and try to stay ahead of things. And it makes it more relevant if you actually do have a skin in the game. Don't bet your farm, don't bet your life savings, but put a little bit of money spread around, then you get to learn a lot more and be in tune with the changes that occur. And along the way, you lose a lot of money, but also maybe if ICOs and things, if you have to catch early, it'll do well. So the point is not about investment, it's really about lifestyle, meaning you got to be in the mode of learning new things. And I think that's the point I like to make as opposed to investments.
Perry, thanks a lot for your private advice here. And thanks a lot to all our reviewers for these insights. That was indeed very insightful. Good to have this discussion with you here on the floor. And please, a big applause for our reviewers. Thank you. Need some light? Okay. So everybody sits. Welcome. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, this is the last program point in today's plenary session. And as you know, every K.E.Y. plenary session, from the first to this sixth one, is deemed to be very significant. However, we need to deal with today's event, in an even more sincere, even more serious way. It's time to conduct an in-depth discussion on how to embrace changes in the global political and economic landscape that will have a grave impact on peace on the Korean Peninsula, in Northeast Asia, and on Earth. Policy mentors for the Korean and for the US presidents are here today to give their valuable opinions on a trust-building process on the Korean Peninsula and an initiative for peace and cooperation in Northeast Asia. Joining us now are Dr. Moon Chang-in, Distinguished Professor Emeritus at Yonsei University, and President Moon Jae-in, Special Policy Advisor on Unification, Foreign Affairs, National Security, and again, Dr. Edwin Follner, the founder of the Heritage Foundation. Welcome to both of you. Please, a big applause for the two gentlemen. So, we will have a special talk session under the theme of the Inter-Korean Summit and the US North Korea Summit and Path to Peace on the Korean Peninsula. Today's program will be based on this in-depth discussion between the two scholars. You will have the opportunity to ask questions to the two, but please, I shall remind you, you can write down your questions. Write down your question. You all have paper booklets next to you. If you have questions, please write it down and bring it up to our reception desk, I call it. So, are you ready? Are you ready? Let's get started.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you. It's a great honor to be here. And you all know that Dr. Follner, he's a kind of visionary. He has amazing clairvoyance, you know. And I remember while I was studying in the United States in the mid-1970s and late 1970s, Heritage Foundation studied. Nobody was paying attention to the Heritage Foundation, but he made a big success out of that effort. And also, you know, he's one of very few who betted on Mr. Trump. Okay? That really showed he has inner clairvoyancy. And also, he has many friends in Korea. He's one of very few conservatives in Washington who has maintained very good contact with not only the conservative leaders like Jung Mong-jun, but also progressive leaders like Kim Dae-jung. I was the executive director of Kim Dae-jung Presidential Library, and we have a lot of data set involving President Kim Dae-jung and Dr. Follner. Anyhow, really, it is a great honor for me to be a moderator and discussant of you here.
Thank you, Chong-in. Thank you.
And you really, I look at your keynote speech, and you came up with two major keywords. One is destructive chip. It sounds very negative to Koreans, and also Mr. Trump is known as a very destructive leader. But I was instantly thinking about Joseph Schumpeter, his destructive creation, And how do can you elaborate on the concept of a destructive chip?
I guess in a more precise definition, maybe I would not use destructive, I would say disruptive. In terms of change, not necessarily in terms of knocking it out and wiping it out. But we both know Schumpeter and what he says in terms of how economies particularly progress by significant change. But Donald Trump is different. He's a negotiator, sits across the table. He knows in his own mind where he wants to be, but he's also a good poker player. He's not going to tell the other guy where he wants to be. And so you take this disruptive ability of looking outside the usual way you look at things, particularly in Washington, and say, hey, let's go for the big deal. And the big deal, of course, is sitting down with the president of the Democratic Republic, People's Republic of Korea, DPRK. And, nobody thought that could happen. And today, even his critics on the left in the United States are saying, hey, we got to give him credit. Something hopefully will happen at the summit, but at least he was able to get the summit. So it's a new era.
It really is amazing, even if you look at the liberal leader like President Obama, he was demonizing North Korea, but Trump has a completely different way of understanding North Korea. No matter how demonic North Korean leader might be, I'm willing to talk with him and even have a hamburger with him too. And that's a really amazing one. Our special envoys went to Washington to brief up their visit to Pyongyang. And I was told that initially, his steps were extremely critical of idea of having summit talk with Mr. Kim Jong-un of North Korea. But President Trump just simply ignored them as I would do it. And even he arranged our Ambassador Chung's press conference in the White House. Is it kind of a reflection of his disruptive leadership?
Very much so. In the United States system, it is very unusual for a foreign leader alone to appear outside the White House and make an announcement. I had the great opportunity to meet with Ambassador Chung when I was here in Seoul in January. Then I saw him again on that trip when he was in Washington 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago. And the fact that the President of the United States said, I want you to go out and tell the American people why this is important and what's happening, I think showed two things. Number one, he was not going to be tied down by anybody on his own staff. And number two, how important he thinks the bilateral relationship is and how we have to work closely together.
Dan, do you really think that the summit will take place?
Oh, the summit's going to take place.
But
what I don't know is what the results will be,
And what did you bet on the result of the summit talk?
As I said this morning, I think it's going to be a long journey. And I think of young people who I have the opportunity to meet with and talk to, either here or back home, there's always kind of a desire for instant gratification. Well, if you're talking about assuring Kim Jong-un that we're not looking for regime change, but you have to give up missiles, you have to give up nuclear bombs, all these major things, and then maybe we'll talk to you about building a McDonald's in Pyongyang. That's going to take a while. It's not going to happen right away. And one thing I think Trump knows is there have to be what you and professionals call CBM, confidence building measures. We have to see positive things happening in Pyongyang or from Pyongyang, whether it's dismantling the missiles immediately, because otherwise Trump's not going to give in on sanctions.
But let us look at the case of North Korean nuclear missile issues. Okay, as to nuclear issues, first, Kim Jong-un got to freeze nuclear missile activities. And second, he got to declare what he has with regard to nuclear missile missiles. And third one, then there got to be inspection. Inspection can be challenging. And after inspection, there would be verifiable dismantling. But you need this step-by-step approach. But now I see very interesting contrast between North Korea and the US. North Korean position is this: let us do it in incremental way based on the action for action principle. But the President Trump, particularly John Bolton, would argue that that's a nonsensical one. We cannot wait that far. Let us make a comprehensive and one-shot deal. But there, I see the very interesting kind of the divergence between Pyongyang and Washington on that issue. What is your take on that one?
Donald Trump's a very good negotiator. Those are exactly the kinds of challenges that he likes to face, and he likes to come up with some kind of sensible conclusion. I don't know how long that the process would take, but one thing I do know is there are not going to be any preemptive concessions by the U.S. side as there were in past negotiations with the DPRK. So how exactly it works out, I don't know, but I know that both in his own mind and in his own style, he will, by thinking big, by being disruptive, and by sticking to the principles he believes in, he thinks he can make a good deal. And that's important.
But let us get to the specifics. What kinds of outcomes would he want to have so that he can bring it to the United States as a gift? Can you give us some specific examples?
Total destruction, elimination of missiles right away.
Right away.
Full inspection by U.S. inspectors, not some vague UN agency. Look what just happened in Syria. The Russians kept the inspectors, the independent inspectors, out for 5 days, during which the Russians had a chance to clean up the site of the chemical weapons. You know, if North Korea has a couple months to put some devices deeper underground or hide them or protect components, Trump will not think that's a very good deal. So I'm not a nuclear scientist. I can't tell you exactly what has to happen, but we do have them, and we know what specific steps have to happen. They're going to happen pretty quickly.
Yeah, but
before there's a reduction of sanctions or any hint of going toward a normal relationship.
But according to today's American news report, that there was a speculation that President Trump might want the immediate destruction of intercontinental ballistic missile. But in return for that, President Trump might use the bargaining cards such as a reduction of American forces in South Korea. Do you think that is acceptable?
No, I don't. I think the U.S. presence in South Korea has been for 60 years now a stabilizing influence, not only on the peninsula, but on the whole area. I mean, Japan knows the United States has a very big presence here, and that is comforting to Japan, and China knows it, and that might be a little discomforting, but at the same time, it's predictable, it's been there, it's stable. So I don't see him going that way. Can I see him in terms of reduction of sanctions step by step? Yes, I can see that. I can see him in terms of possible one-on-one major American construction company working with South Korean or Japanese going in and building out infrastructure in North. Things like that could I think happen. Not just Kaesong type things where you're weaving cloth or making garments, but something big and substantial. Again, one of the things he says, going back to his book, The Art of the Deal, 1987, he says, if you're going to think big and go for the big deal. I mean, that's why he's doing this. He's not out there piddling around with something at the margin. This is a challenge that has faced every president, really, going back to Eisenhower. So how do we move it? And he thinks maybe he can make a real difference.
But Mr. Trump is a very smart negotiator. He knows how to make linkages among contending issues. Therefore, in fact, some journalists in South Korea asked him the question, wouldn't President Trump use the reduction of American forces card for the defense cost-sharing negotiation between Seoul and Washington? Therefore, in other words, President Trump can use that card in two ways. For North Korea, okay, if you get rid of your intercontinental ballistic missile in verifiable way, I will reduce size of American forces in South Korea, and then President can use it for as bargaining leverage vis-a-vis the defense cost-sharing with South Korea.
Yeah, but I think he has been very pleased with the response of the Moon government and the very close relationship and the close collaborative expense sharing right now. One thing about being a good bargainer the way he is, once an item's settled, you take it off the table. You move on to the next point of conflict. So that's one I think that he views as being settled, and yeah, it's conceivable it could come up, but not likely, I don't think.
If you look at the diplomatic history, there are very few examples in which summit diplomacy failed. Summit talks exist for the sake of success. Otherwise, there is no reason to have a summit.
Yeah,
Do you buy that proposition?
The team he has built and rebuilt in the last few weeks understand him. They understand the purpose of this summit. They want success, and success, Donald Trump knows that success has to be acceptable to both sides. So there has to be give and take. I'm not sure quite what the give is going to be from our side, and again, it's going to be on a reciprocal basis. I watched him this morning with the Japanese Prime Minister in Mar-a-Lago, and that was the key word he used when he talked about trade. not only free trade, not only fair trade, but reciprocal trade. So he's going to be looking for reciprocal responses in a timely fashion when he meets with Kim Jong-un.
President Trump can frame his reasoning on the basis of reciprocity. And I would say that Mr. Pompeo would be supporting or taking sides with President Trump, but John Bolton, new security advisor, might have a different view because I have been following up his negotiation pattern. That he wouldn't buy that kinds of reciprocity or 1-8. His approach is like a Libyan model, okay, CBID, complete, verifiable, and irreversible dismantling of nuclear weapons first. Otherwise, no compensation. How would President Trump handle that kind of contending views among his steps?
I've been in enough serious discussions with the president to know that he thrives on the conflict of ideas and different approaches, and how do we get from here to there? Sometimes it isn't a straight line, sometimes it's this way to get there. But once the decision's made, he expects everybody to be on board. And I think this was frankly some of the problems that he had with some of his earlier appointees. But I know Bolton very well, and Bolton is a team player. He will present his position vigorously, and the president will listen to him. Pompeo obviously has had the advantage that he has absolutely first-hand knowledge of what's going on in Pyongyang and how it fits together. The president will listen to both of them. He'll listen to other people from the outside and various people already inside the State Department or over at the Pentagon. But once he makes a decision, everybody will be on board. So the fact that Bolton comes in from one side and Pompeo from another side, those things will sort themselves out.
In your opinion, what is the minimal requirement to make the summit successful from the Trump point of view and from American public point of view?
Meaningful reduction on the nuclear side, whether it's the missiles, whether it's the weapons themselves. It has to be meaningful, verifiable, quick, and at that point we can start talking about loosening economic sanctions, et cetera. And that's the minimum. Hopefully, as I said in my remarks this morning, hopefully Kim Jong-un will realize that it's really in his own interest, as well as the interest of his people up there, as well as the whole world, to, hey, let's get this thing off the table. Let's act like mature members of the international community. After all, not too long ago, neither Korea was a member of the United Nations. Now North Korea is, but it doesn't act that way.
Let us go one by one, what
Sure.
North Korea want. Okay, North Korea want so-called verifiable dismantling of American nuclear weapons in South Korea. But that proposition doesn't work because the United States doesn't maintain nuclear weapons.
None are here. We don't have
that
it.
can be deliverable. Second one is the U.S. and South Korea would not use nuclear weapons, strategic weapons to be deployed during the combined military training exercise. I think that can be acceptable, right?
Yeah.
And third, U.S. make it very clear to declare that U.S. would not pose any conventional and nuclear threat to North Korea. Is that acceptable?
And they would not propose any unprovoked.
Unprovoked.
Yes, unprovoked. That would be acceptable.
Therefore, no first use.
Yeah. No
The
first
fourth,
use.
the North Korea demands so-called the signing of peace treaty or accord between the U.S. and DPRK.
I think you know as well as I that the DPRK views a peace treaty as a piece of paper that might in fact be ripped up the next day. Would the United States be willing to do it? No, because when the United States signs something that we agree to, we're going to stick with it. And what does that have to do with where we are now? I mean, the ROK is the realistic partner. I know the ROK didn't sign the original armistice, but that one would not be Again, but I think that's, you know, that's kind of marginal.
Then,
That's not central to where we are.
then how about the diplomatic normalization between Washington and Pyongyang?
Could be. We've already got North Korean diplomats at the UN on U.S. territory. Well, technically on
But
North Korean territory.
Now, I have been talking with your congressional leaders on that issue, diplomatic normalization between Washington and Pyongyang. They have a very great reservation, because unless North Korea shows improvement in human rights and democracy, it would be extremely difficult for Senate to rectify that kinds of normalization treaty.
yeah.
Well, what is your take on that one?
As I said this morning, Vice President Mike Pence has made a particular point of concern about DPRK and human rights violations and abuses. Back to where we started. The summit is the first step. There will be ongoing negotiations. I don't think, you know, Donald Trump is going to say, let's do this every quarter or every 6 months, but every quarter, every 6 months, the Secretary of State, together with their foreign minister, can get together and say, hey, here's what's on the agenda now, let's talk about this or that. Human rights as a trade-off for diplomatic relations, I don't think I think human rights is too important to worry about a piece of real estate in Washington or a piece of real estate at a consulate in San Francisco. That's not a big enough counter. The United States is going to view progress on human rights, I think, more seriously than that.
Removing such a barriers as, trading with enemy act,
Yeah.
okay, and the taking North Korea off the terrorist
Terrorist
sponsoring
list,
state,
yeah.
okay, and the unilateral sanctions by the United States, all those are manageable?
Down the line, if there's a signing of, if there's evidence of good intent from Pyongyang, yeah, those are all, I think they're manageable. Yeah.
And then what really North Korea want is this, having Trump Tower in Taedong River, okay? And also, having American McDonald's, okay? Having Coca-Cola, okay? Having American investors. And as you also, pointed out, ROK-US can come up with several joint ventures and move into North Korea. Would that happen the last, or that can be done in earlier part of the, after the settlement?
I think it can be done. I imagine what North Korea would demand in return is the invulnerability of the regime, that we cannot, and I think Trump has said, hey, it's your territory, it's up to you, your people, to figure out what your own system is. It's a different approach from what George W. Bush, the last Republican president, did. But I think those are manageable. I don't think, let's see, my granddaughter yesterday had her 12th birthday. She might see a Trump Tower in Pyongyang. I don't think I will.
Then, in view of your answers to my questions, there won't be any problem. It's all up to North Korea.
Yeah.
If North Korea shows a real, sincere, and authentic effort toward the denuclearization.
Yeah. Not only efforts, but action.
And
action. Yeah. No, I think it's a good time for this to happen. And I think the reason it's a good time, frankly, is because the pressure is so great right now on the regime up there. And Donald Trump knows that. I think he's going in, again, the poker game, he's going in with a very strong hand.
What is your take of Kim Jong-un? What kinds of leader he is? You're talking about the Trump game, okay?
Yeah.
Card game.
Yeah.
But we got to understand the player, okay? We now understand President Trump, but we do not know about Chairman Kim Jong-un. What is your take of Kim Jong-un? And how would President Trump would think about Kim Jong-un?
I've never talked to President Trump about Kim Jong-un, but 3 weeks ago, I was in Bern, Switzerland, where Kim Jong-un spent 8 or 9 years as a student. And after a day and a half there meeting with local people, not talking about Korea, but US, Swiss issues, I came away and I thought to myself, how could he have spent that much time there and be as bad as he is portrayed in the international arena now? How can that happen? And then he poisons his stepbrother in Kuala Lumpur airport. You know, how? And I guess I'm not a psychiatrist who can, at a distance, analyze the situation like that. But if he thinks normally, the way you and I, and I think most of the people here would, he has to see that coming into this negotiation, there is a way out. And it's a way out where he is safe, but he has to make some changes. But that reminds me too. We once did a paper in my early days at Heritage when we still had the Iron Curtain up and Moscow, Soviet Union was the big adversary. And our paper was called The Mirror Image Fallacy. You look at somebody in Moscow, and because he wears the same kind of suit that you wear, and because he smiles the way you think he thinks the same way, he might have a totally different calculus. And that's what I don't know about Kim Jong-un. I hope you have people in part of your governments, whether it's a unification ministry or elsewhere, who can answer that better. I hope we have people in our government who can answer that question better. But again, from my just 2 days in Switzerland, just that must have rubbed off on him to some point, I would think. But we'll see, huh?
But anyhow, Ambassador Donald Gregg.
Of course,
He wrote in the memoir, and the ambassador Gregg came up with very interesting argument saying that North Korea has been one of the greatest intelligence failures of CIA. He wrote in his book that I worked for CIA 35 years, but I would say that North Korea was one of the greatest intelligence failures. The reason being is first, they are relying on the mirror image in analyzing North Korea. And second, group thinking, so deeply embedded in American intelligence community. And in that way, North Korea has been demonized by American intelligence community. And that in fact prevented objective understanding of North Korea. Do you agree with his observation, or?
Like Don Gregg, I would reject the notion of groupthink. I would, like Donald Trump, I would like to have different perspectives come in so that I could make my own decision. But at the same time, when I look at the absolute evidence, the controls on the economy that keep down productivity, that prohibit markets from working, the presence of, in effect, concentration camps, the lack of human rights, as Prime Minister Abe talked today, the abduction issue, which goes back decades. All of these things they're real. I mean, this is not some figment of the right wing's imagination that this is a bad guy. I mean, the regime is not good. Maybe there is some opening here again, looking at his background, but that's to be determined, I guess, at the meeting. Yeah?
But in your view, then, the summit will be successful, right?
If there's flexibility from Pyongyang, the summit will be successful.
But I think Pyongyang is really well preparing for the summit. They are really betting their entire regime, regime survival on the summit. That is why I think that the Pyongyang will come up with a complete preparation. They will be doing all the homeworks. But in the United States, but the whole point is this. But Secretary of State in transition, okay, and John Bolton was just appointed a few days ago. Do you see? I know America is a great country, but do you really think the Trump administration is that kind of so-called personal infrastructure to prepare for the successful summit?
Yes.
You don't see any problem?
There is enough depth in the different government agencies. He has enough opportunity from people on the outside to get independent views. And again, his team is strong and it's deep. When you talk about John Bolton, National Security Council has 110 or 115 staff professionals. Of those 115, there must be at least 20 of them working on Asia. Of those 20, at least 5 or 6 must know Korea intimately, including what's going on in Pyongyang and in DPRK. So he's got a lot of depth around him, and he will be prepared. He doesn't go into negotiations without being prepared.
Okay. Let me raise this issue in hypothetical manner. Okay. Suppose Chairman Kim Jong-un gave 2 gifts to President Trump. One is, okay, I will get rid of intercontinental ballistic missile in verifiable way in very short time period. At the same time, I will allow United Nations Human Rights Commission to come over to North Korea and inspect so-called political prisoners camps. And if United Nations Human Rights Commission think it is really problematic, then I will get rid of the whole these political prisoners camps. Suppose if North Korean leader give those 2 gifts to President Trump, then do you think that can be acceptable to him?
What happens to the bombs? What about the
Of course,
the
bombs
nuclear?
will come later.
Yeah. See, that's when we start getting into problems in terms of how it will work itself out. But since you're the senior advisor at Chunhwa Dae, I hope that President Moon will get some of those preliminary questions out of the way next week when he has his summit. So then Trump won't have to worry about them.
But I think Victor Cha wrote a very interesting piece in the New York Times.
I saw it.
What he was saying is, okay, if no matter how hard South Korea worked to make a North-South Korean summit successful, if the U.S. DPRK summit talk becomes a failure, then American choice would be hardline actions against North Korea, including military actions. Do you buy that argument? It's a very pessimistic projection.
Yeah. Victor's a good friend, but he has been, his viewpoint is pretty far away, I think, from where the president has been and where he is going. No, I don't think that's really the way that Donald Trump or that his administration would look at it. I think they see more opportunity moving ahead between South and North. They see the South-North Summit as being a genuine predecessor to what is going to happen between Washington and Pyongyang. And let's move kind of step by step. And there are, going back the phrase I used before, confidence building measures. And this goes back 20 years ago when our mutual friend Kim Dae-jung was talking about family reunification and some of those questions that should be an easy give by North Korea in terms of, again, looking forward, looking positive, and how do we make something constructive happen? Now, in return for that, you can't have an elimination of sanctions, but it would be a good start for a Trump meeting 6 weeks later.
But in our government dilemma is very simple and straightforward. We have set the 3 agenda. First agenda is the denuclearization of North Korea.
Yeah.
Second agenda is coming up with some kinds of lasting peace settlement on the Korean Peninsula. Third one is improving inter-Korean relations. But problem is this, unless there is a progress in denuclearization, other 2 items cannot make a progress. Therefore, in other words, the success of inter-Korean summit is totally dependent upon the success of U.S. DPRK summit. How to overcome this kind of dilemma? What kind of advice would you give it to the President Moon Jae-in?
Be straightforward, be principled, know what it is you want, listen to you and other advisors, Ambassador Chung and others, in terms of what you expect to get out of your own summit. And then remember, and I was very, very glad for the meeting down in Mar-a-Lago, because we not only need Washington and Seoul together, we have to have Tokyo in there just that close too. because we share so many interests. You know, Japan basing of U.S. airplanes, et cetera, what Japan means in terms of security in South Korea. So I think your president knows where he wants to go. I hope he does, and that this will be a positive experience for not only the people of the North, but also a reinforcing of how to get along in the world and how to make real progress.
Yeah, that is why, you know, our government is spending about 100% of effort on inter-Korean summit talk, but we are spending 300% more than what we spent on North Korea in order to make a DPRK-US summit successful. That is in our approach. That is why we have been in full consultation with the United States, and particularly we have been very excellent communication channel with Michael Pompeo. You know, therefore, we have been doing working together. You know,
and of
but
course,
Japan is a somewhat interesting case. You know, because Japan, you know, has been too tough on North Korea. Japan wants, you know, North Korea's, you know, the dismantling, verifiable dismantling of missiles and, you know, nuclear first. Then we come up with some kinds of compensation measures. And also, Japan has been pushing for the kidnapped Japanese users and proposing to have some kinds of trilateral coalition: U.S., Japan, South Korea, with each on the issue of kidnap and abduction issue. But in the sense, Japan has been somewhat, you know, divergent from the U.S. in South Korea, and I could see that kind of divergence even during the the meeting between Prime Minister Abe and President Trump. What is your take on that one?
Well,
but apparently he's bandwagoning on this
on
dialogue.
the abductions, there's always going to be different emphases. The number of times that I've been here in years gone by when comfort women was the main issue between Seoul and Tokyo, and a very legitimate difference and something that had to be settled. But again, you have to find those 90% of the things that the three, Seoul, Tokyo, and Washington, agree on. Stay focused on those, and let's see how we can move in that same good, positive direction.
Now, I have some questions from floor.
Oh, okay. My
First
gosh.
question is this, suppose North Korea denuclearized, and then there is a declaration to the end the state of war on the Korean Peninsula. Then what should be the status of U.S. forces in South Korea?
That's a...
And also allocate U.S. combined military training.
Those kind of secondary issues, I think, can be worked out. I think we view, and for that matter, I think Beijing views the presence of American troops at this stage on the Korean Peninsula, at least south of the 38th parallel, as being a stabilizing factor. So the notion that somehow the 34,000 would be removed, I don't think is a starter from either the ROK perspective or anybody else's real interest here. And again, 65 years they've been here. There have been no preemptive strikes. So anyway.
But on this issue, really, it is really interesting that North Korea did not raise those two issues. For example, surprisingly, under the Kim Jong-un, North Korea hasn't raised the issue of withdrawal of American forces from South Korea. And also, when our special envoy visited Pyongyang and had a talk with him, he made it very clear: if the ROK-US combined, military exercise and training maintain so-called previous year's level, without mobilizing strategic weapons, we are going to tolerate. Therefore, as to those issues, even if there is a peace settlement, maybe there could be, North Korea might tolerate the continuing presence of American forces in South Korea. But North Korea is concerned is what is the nature of mission and purpose of American forces in South Korea. If it is hostile to North Korea will oppose it. But if the United States is willing to change its mission and the purpose, then I think North Korea might be willing to accommodate it.
Well, that will depend on actions from North Korea too, as well as their deployment of troops, of heavy weapons, conventional weapons, but heavy weapons along the border, et cetera. But I think those in kind of conventional thinking terms, those are negotiable, those can be handled further down the pike. The main thing right now is the nuclear issue, and how do we get a handle on that?
Yeah. And another question is this. North Korea leader has, expressed that he's willing to, denuclearize. If there's no military threat, and the threat to his regime, okay, there's no reason why North Korea maintains nuclear weapons. And denuclearization is the will of his grandfather and father. But this question raised the issue of authenticity of his statement. To what extent can we trust that he will go for denuclearization? Okay, and also if you look at the case of Libya and Ukraine, both failed agreement. Is there any incentive for North Korea to go for denuclearization?
He said there is?
No. North Korea has been always citing the case of Libya. Libya did a CBID, and then NATO invading Libya.
But he's also said that he was willing to move toward denuclearization, and the question from our side always is, of course, how he defines that. What's the time frame? How does it happen? What are the trade-offs along the line? Again, those kinds of questions are the things that will, I guess, be negotiated and be discussed when we get together.
But the whole point is that as this question raised that we believe that the presence of American forces in South Korea is a product of old Cold War structure. And if there is improved inter-Korean relations, and then also if China and U.S. relations get better, is there any reason or rationale to maintain American forces in South Korea? That is his question.
I remember my very good friend Don Rumsfeld, when he was Secretary of Defense, visiting Seoul and being urged by some members of the National Assembly to reduce the number of American troops here, that the ROK was not going to do anything more in terms of cost share, burden sharing. And Rumsfeld said, I wouldn't push very hard on that door, because there are a lot of people in the United States who would be quite happy to see the American troops come home. That has to be weighed. Again, Donald Trump looks at America's interests, and when America's interests absolutely coincide with those of our allies, that's very positive. That's something that he really likes. But the first thing he's going to look at is American interests. And if there were groundswell in the ROK to get the American troops out of here, as Rumsfeld said, you wouldn't have to push very hard on that to bring them back home.
But there will be domestic debate in South Korea. Obviously, conservative forces in South Korea would support the continued presence of American troops even after improved inter-Korean relations. But the liberals and the progressive would raise a question, particularly if the United States push too much pressure for defense cost sharing.
Yeah, well, that's exactly, but that's why right now, as I travel around and talk to different journalists, different academics, and other people, I sense that there is a real keen appreciation that the United States and Korea are much closer together in terms of these questions than they have been for many years, and that's a critical and positive role as we go into these two summits. That's why I'm so pleased. Ambassador Chung made a special trip over to see John Bolton and be able to talk to him on his first couple days in office, that Moon and Trump talk to each other on the phone all the time. Those are all very positive signs, and I hope they're reflected not only in the media, but also in terms of the Seoul establishment telling people that let's take this one step at a time, let's see where we're going, and let's push for the best.
But some people in South Korea argue that Trump is much closer to President Trump. But President Moon okay, is not that close to President Trump. Do you buy that proposition?
I don't know. I've been in the room with both of them, and the interpersonal relationship seems to be very positive, so I hope that prevails and it continues.
Then what kind of advice would you give to President Moon Jae-in, okay, in preparing Inter-Korean Summit?
First thing, know what your objectives are when you go in, make them reasonable, be very candid in terms that, hey, this all depends also on a positive outcoming 6 weeks from now when you sit down with Donald Trump, because the two are clearly linked together, and let's make sure we stay that kind of together, so that, again, whether it's whatever you decide and your colleagues decide in the Chunhwa Day in terms of what your agenda, specific objectives are, that they're absolutely consistent with what Washington is doing, and that we're on the same, not only in the same hymnal, but on the same song sheet in the hymnal.
And what kind of advice would you give it to President Trump in preparing for the summit talk with Kim Jong-un?
Watch very closely what happens at Panmunjom next week. Make sure that you get the best intel in terms of all the ramifications of what happened there. Listen. He's a very good listener, by the way. People say he doesn't listen. Donald Trump listens, and he hears, and he processes information in a very straightforward but very intense way. And do that, and then go in and make a good deal.
But I think, as Dr. Fulner pointed out, President Trump is a somewhat extraordinary person that goes beyond the conventional wisdom. That his way of handling foreign affairs in disruptive manner can bring success, okay? And therefore, first, Dr. Fulner's first keyword, disruptive,
right,
chip, meaning what? Getting away from conventional wisdom, yeah, and going to somewhat creative way of resolving the case. I hope that we can really bet on that kinds of new leadership in the United States. And second one, really, your second comment on the long journey is very much appreciated. We cannot solve North Korean nuclear problem and regime problem in a, through the quick fix solution. It will take a time. It will need patience, prudence, and multiple, coordination and consultation.
Consistency, yeah.
With that remarks, I will conclude this session. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Chung-In. Thank you.
Yeah, Edwin, thank you very much.
Thanks,
really
Michael.
a pleasure.
Yes.
Dr. Moon, thank you very much.
You want us to get out of here,
yeah,
I'll bet.
exactly. Edwin, good understand.
Thank you.
All right,
Thanks, Michael.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, again, thank you for this really, truly very insightful and impressive, in-depth discussion. Please, a big applause to the two gentlemen. Thank you. So this morning, Money Today's CEO and President Park Yong-myan delivered his welcome speech under the theme of Spring is Coming. Then the plenary discussion here, this audience, began with a talk about decentralization and now concluded with the ideas for the success of the Inter-Korean Summit and the success of the North Korea-US Summit. I think that spring will feature a peace-building process on the Korean Peninsula, starting from next week. And that summer will be characterized by a peaceful and balanced decentralization. I hope that you and your organizations will reap the desired fruits in this process. Ladies and gentlemen, dear audience participants, this concludes the opening plenary for 2018 Key Platform, Decentralization, Frenzy, Digitized World. thank you very much for attending this great, this meaningful event today. My name is Michael Tram. Thank you very much.